Welcome back to TESS'S Cryptids. Are you ready to get a little spooked too?
Hmm.
We're heading to the misty, mysterious lands of Ireland and Scotland.
Ooh.
Our quarry this time, the Dobhar-chú. Imagine a creature straight out of a campfire story.
Okay.
A blend of otter and hound, but huge. We're talking 10 to 15 feet long. That's no cuddly river otter.
Yeah, what I find intriguing is that the Dobhar-chú is more than just a monster in the shadows. Its legend is woven into the history and folklore of both Ireland and Scotland, passed down through generations, often through oral tradition. It really speaks to how these stories connect people to a specific place and time.
So this isn't just some recent internet craze, right? This thing has deep roots.
Oh, no.
What about its name, Dobhar-chú? Does that give us any clues?
Absolutely. Dobhar-chú literally translates to water hound in Irish, but it goes deeper than that.
Okay.
The word Dobhar for water is found in other Celtic languages like Welsh and Cornish.
Huh.
This suggests the legend might be ancient, potentially stretching back to a time when these cultures were more closely connected.
Okay, so we've got a mysterious name and a history that spans centuries. But what about the creature itself? What are we dealing with here? I mean, is this thing all teeth and terror, or is there more to it?
Well, descriptions can vary, but picture this. A massive otter-like creature, maybe 10 to 15 feet long, with white fur, black-tipped ears,
Wow.
and a chilling detail, a black cross marking its back, almost like nature's warning sign.
Well,
Yeah.
black cross, that's a bit creepy, not gonna lie.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if this creature's all bad or something more complex.
Right, and the intriguing thing is, some accounts describe the Dobhar-chú with darker fur, maybe from the murky water it lives in. Imagine trying to spot that in the depths of a loch.
Gives me the shivers just thinking about it. But this isn't just about spooky sightings, is it? There's a famous story that really brings the Dobhar-chú legend to life. The tragic tale of Grace McGoylan.
This story, dating back to 1722, is more than just a monster story. It's a human tragedy woven into the fabric of the Dobhar-chú myth. It said Grace was washing clothes by Glenade Lough when she was attacked and killed by the creature.
Her husband, Terence, found her body with the Dobhar-chú right there on top of her. Talk about a horrifying scene. It said he killed the beast in a fit of grief and rage, but that wasn't the end of it, was it?
No, the legend says that as the first Dobhar-chú died, it let out a piercing whistle, a signal to its mate. Then the mate bursts from the lake, chasing Terence relentlessly.
Oh my gosh.
Some stories say he fought alone, others say he had help, but somehow he managed to kill the second Dobhar-chú too.
Wow, what a story. But here's where it gets even more interesting. There's supposed to be physical evidence connected to this tale. A headstone in Conwall Cemetery in Glenade is said to mark Grace's grave and actually depict the Dobhar-chú itself.
That headstone is fascinating. It's described as a sandstone slab carved with an image of a creature that's definitely dog-like in its body, but with that long curved tail, very otter-like.
Oh, wow.
It's a tangible piece of history, even if its link to the Dobhar-chú is still debated.
So we've got vivid descriptions, terrifying stories passed down for generations, and even a possible piece of physical evidence. It begs the question, could the Dobhar-chú actually exist? I mean, where do you stand on this? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The legend is compelling, but we have to acknowledge there's no concrete scientific evidence to support the existence of a creature like the Dobhar-chú. No photographs, no video footage, no skeletal remains. But that doesn't mean we dismiss it entirely. After all, absence of evidence isn't always evidence of absence, right? That's the scientific approach. Absolutely. We can't just jump to conclusions. But I'm curious, what about you? Do you think there's a chance something like that Dobhar-chú could be lurking in those waters? Honestly, part of me wants to believe it's so easy to get swept up in these stories, especially when they're rooted in such a specific place and culture. But then the skeptical side of me kicks in, and I start thinking, okay, what's the most likely explanation here?
That's the right way to approach it. It's about finding that balance between the thrill of the unknown and the need for critical thinking. So let's play devil's advocate for a moment. What if we try to poke holes in the Dobhar-chú legend?
All right, challenge accepted. Let's start with the lack of concrete evidence. No photos, no videos, no bones. For a creature this large, wouldn't we expect to find something?
You'd think so. A creature that size would need a substantial food source, and it would leave traces. Prey remains disturbances in the ecosystem. We'd see signs of its presence beyond just fleeting glimpses.
And what about the headstone? I know it's a popular piece of evidence, but couldn't it just be a stylized depiction of a dog or a wolf? I mean, people see what they want to see, right?
That's true. We have to consider the possibility that the image on the headstone has been embellished over time. Stories change as they're passed down through generations. Details get added, exaggerated, or even misinterpreted.
Okay, so we're casting doubt on the physical evidence, but what about all those eyewitness accounts? Are we saying everyone who claims to have seen that Dobhar-chú is mistaken or lying?
Not necessarily. I think it's important to remember the power of suggestion and misidentification. Imagine you're by a misty lake at dusk. You see a dark shape moving in the water. Your mind, already primed with stories of the Dobhar-chú, might fill in the blanks and create a monster where there's just a large otter or a seal.
That makes sense. Fear and imagination can play tricks on us, especially in dimly lit or unfamiliar environments. We tend to see what we expect to see or what we're afraid of seeing.
Exactly. And it's not just about individual perception, there's also a cultural element at play. These stories, these legends, they become part of a community's identity. They shape the way people interact with their environment, how they explain the unexplainable.
So the Dobhar-chú legend could be a way for people to understand the power and unpredictability of nature, even if the creature itself isn't real.
That's one way to look at it. These stories can serve as warnings, as reminders of the forces that exist beyond our control, but they can also be a source of wonder and fascination, a way to connect with the mysteries of the natural world.
So are we saying the Dobhar-chú is just a product of overactive imaginations and cultural storytelling? No chance of it actually existing?
I wouldn't go that far while I'm skeptical. I also believe there's still so much we don't know about the world, especially the depths of our oceans and lakes.
You're right. There are always new species being discovered. What if the Dobhar-chú is some kind of undiscovered aquatic mammal? Something that's managed to evade detection all this time.
It's an exciting thought, isn't it? But we also have to be realistic. A creature as large and as predatory as the Dobhar-chú would likely have left more of a mark on its environment.
Good point. But then again, maybe it's incredibly elusive, or perhaps its population is so small that it's incredibly rare to see one.
That's possible, but it starts to push the boundaries of plausibility we have to weigh the evidence or lack thereof against extraordinary claims.
So where does that leave us? Are we saying that Dobhar-chú is a myth, a misidentification, or something else entirely?
Honestly, I don't think there's a simple answer. The Dobhar-chú exists in that fascinating realm between myth and reality, where stories and science intersect. It's a creature that sparks our curiosity, challenges our perceptions, and reminds us that the natural world can still hold surprises.
You know, even if that Dobhar-chú turns out to be just a legend, it still tells us something about ourselves, about our relationship with the unknown, and our need to explain the world around us.
Absolutely. These stories, whether rooted in fact or fiction, hold a certain power. They make us think, they make us wonder, and sometimes they even make us a little bit afraid.
And there's something to be said for that, for keeping a sense of wonder and mystery alive in a world that often feels too explained.
I agree. Sometimes it's okay to embrace the unknown, to let ourselves be captivated by the possibility of something extraordinary, even if it turns out to be just a ripple in the water or a shadow in the mist.
Well said, but before we get too lost in the mist, let's shift gears for a moment. We've talked about the legend, the evidence, and the possibility of misidentification, but what about the Dobhar-chú's behavior? Is it always portrayed as this aggressive man-eating monster?
That's a great question. While the story of Grace McLoylan certainly paints a terrifying picture of the Dobhar-chú as this deadly predator, other stories offer a different perspective.
Really tell me more about that. I'm all ears.
In some tales, the Dobhar-chú isn't a bloodthirsty monster. It's more of a guardian spirit, a protector of the water, almost like a mythical watchdog of the lake.
Interesting. So less monster under the bed and more spirit of the place.
Exactly. It's almost as if that Dobhar-chú represents that duality in nature. It can be fierce and dangerous, but also protective and even benevolent, especially towards those who respect its territory. There are even stories of people befriending the creature, or at least coexisting peacefully alongside it.
Okay, that's a fascinating twist. It makes me think about how folklore often reflects our own complicated feelings about nature. We're drawn to its beauty and power, but we're also wary of its dangers.
Right. We both revere and fear the untamed aspects of nature, and those feelings often get projected onto the creatures we imagine inhabiting those spaces. It's like we create stories to try and understand those forces we can't control.
So the Dobhar-chú, like many cryptids, could be a mirror reflecting our anxieties and fascinations with the unknown. This push and pull between wanting to discover and being afraid of what we might find.
That's a very insightful point. These creatures often embody the things we can't quite grasp, those mysteries that linger at the edge of our understanding. They challenge our neat and tidy explanations of the world and remind us there are still blank spots on the map, both literally and figuratively.
It makes you wonder, if you were standing by a misty loch in Scotland, knowing the legend of the Dobhar-chú, would you dip a toe in the water?
Honestly, I'd approach with a healthy dose of caution and respect for the environment, but a part of me would definitely be looking for a ripple, a shadow, anything that might hint at something extraordinary lurking beneath the surface, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. The Dobhar-chú, whether real or imagined, reminds us to stay curious, to embrace the mystery and wonder of the world. It's a call to approach nature with both respect and a sense of adventure. Thanks for joining us for another cryptid deep dive. Another exciting exploration on TESS'S cryptids.
It's been a pleasure, and who knows, maybe one day we'll have definitive proof of that Dobhar-chú. Until then, the legend